So we're going to be discussing a part of chapter 4 this evening, and it's an important aspect, and that is the mind. And the chapter is entitled "The Mind Wreaks Havoc." Now, when you start studying the subject of Vedanta, as you've already covered 2 lessons dealing with the human composition, you understand that a human being is made up of these 3 equipments: a body, a mind, and an intellect. Now, the body doesn't require much investigation. So we are more interested in the subject of Vedanta in the inner personality, rectifying the inner personality. If you're able to rectify the inner personality, in other words, fortify the intellect and chasten the mind, then automatically the actions follow. So we don't need to worry too much about the body. And when I say worry too much about the body, of course, the body, it's like a vehicle. You got to take care of it. You take your car for a wash, at least every now and again. So you got to maintain the body. We'll do a chapter later in the book, which deals a little bit about this. But for the purpose of tonight's discussion, we're going to take a more in-depth look at the mind. And what you must bear in mind is that the entire world is suffering. The reason why we are in a state that we are in is because people are functioning purely off the mind. There's no intellectual discretion applied to anything that anybody does. And there are repercussions to this way of functioning. You cannot function purely on the mind. It has consequences. So Vedanta is nothing but this interrelationship between mind and intellect. In fact, we can't necessarily talk about the mind without the intellect. The 2 form our subtle body. Now, we're going to highlight a few aspects of the mind tonight. And bear in mind that this may create the kind of feeling that, oh, the mind is something terrible. But remember, the mind has good aspects, good qualities. But if ungoverned, those good aspects, those good qualities can go awry. So in other words, they can lead to detrimental effects within the personality, as opposed to positive attributes. So every aspect of the mind must be guided, governed, and controlled by the intellect. So the human mind can become ruinous if the intellect is not developed enough to govern it. The mind behaves like a child while the intellect plays the role of an adult. So does your mind need the attention and guidance of your intellect. An uncontrolled mind can wreak havoc. Most people invariably succumb to the pressures of the mind, which has proven detrimental, fatal. So again, as we mentioned, without intellectual guidance, this is where the problem arises. See, if you understand this relationship between mind and intellect as a similar relationship between adult and child, then it's easier to follow. Becomes much easier to understand and appreciate what we're trying to say. So you'll appreciate a child. A child is beautiful, innocent, ignorant. A child shows and displays wonderful characteristics. It's undeniable. Everyone is drawn towards the child. But you can't ask the child to look after the house while you go away for the weekend. You just wouldn't do that. The child lacks the capacity to be able to make decisions. It won't be able to look after itself. There's certain things it can't do, cook for itself, and all of those things. If there's an emergency, what's it going to do? So in this situation, it would be prudent to allow some adult supervision. Now, you say, oh, I'm going away. Do you mind looking after, you say to Reddit, do you mind looking after the child for the weekend? We're going off. We got a wedding or whatever it is. Yeah, sure, I don't mind, and look after the child. No problem at all. Same thing with the human condition. You wouldn't leave the mind alone to make decisions, to make choices, to do certain things. Yet this is exactly what's happening because the intellect is so underdeveloped. So what happens is the mind is forced into a situation where it's doing things it's not designed to do. And this creates a massive problem within the human being. So we understand that the reason that the mind wreaks havoc is that for no other reason, should I say, than a weak intellect. So when the intellect is not properly fortified, it's like a parent. Imagine a parent who's does not have the capacity to look after a child. What happens? The child just ends up getting its own way all the time. Same with the mind. If the intellect's not fortified, the mind just gets its own way and pursues all these various aspects, which we're going to learn about tonight. So one thing we understand about the mind is that it has various emotions, these various emotions. But that doesn't mean you should let the emotions get out of control. Again, it's wise to control one's emotions in life. Sometimes you get really angry with someone, and you often I've heard many cases where people say things that they later really regret. In the heat of the moment, they call it. You say something which you really shouldn't have said. Later you realize that. Now, why is that? You let that emotion get the better of you. The mind has overpowered the intellect in that situation. So you lose your temper, you say things you don't mean necessarily, or things you shouldn't say, just because the mind has got the better. This scenario is you give in to the mind's impulses, the mind's desires. This is all addictions. This is a particular result of all addictions, or actually the cause of all addictions, is that the mind has particular desires, the mind has particular impulses, and if not governed and controlled, can lead you down a slippery slope. So this chapter in particular highlights these aspects or the nature of the mind. It's in our interest to be aware of these particular aspects or natures within the mind. Once we're aware of the mind and how it functions, we're in a better position to be able to exercise control over it. Now, we're not talking about any form of suppression or repression, something like that. You can look at it again, go back to this adult-child analogy. It's not that the adult is forcing the mind to do something. It's just guiding, governing. It's taking a leading hand in the situation. That's all. So we don't want to get into the frequency thinking that, okay, whatever the mind is completely bad. It's not. We need to get the mind to go along with the intellect, which is easier once the intellect is strong and fortified. So what you must appreciate in this relationship, again, is that unless we have an acute awareness of the mind's particular natures, there are many nuances within the mind's nature. The more accustomed to the mind's nature you get, the more fortified in this knowledge you get, the more you'll be able to see how the mind plays up within your own personality. See, without knowing this basic fundamental education, this fundamental knowledge, see, these things should have been taught at school, to be honest with you. As a human being, you should know what is the body, what is the mind, what is the intellect. Yeah, now people are 40, 50, still don't know what is a body, mind, intellect, and never even heard of this word intellect. Most of the world is in this situation, not particular to this classroom. So It's like the example is to have a disease is bad, but to have a disease and not know it is fatal. So to have this mind and not know about it or not know how it functions leads to detrimental consequences. And this is exactly what I said in the beginning. This is why we are in a situation that we're in, because people are unaware of the mind, its particular nature, the intellect, what it can do, and simply just launch themselves into this arena of life, not knowing why they're choosing certain things, how they're choosing certain things, not knowing anything. So there's various aspects that we're going to cover within the context of the mind: likes and dislikes, worries and anxieties, desires, the fact you do not know what you want. And then next week, we'll go on to the two motivations, attachment, and then we'll be finished and move on to the intellect. So we'll start with likes and dislikes. Remember, our text is what is in the book. So if you got the book, you can happily follow along. Human beings are caught up in their own attractions and aversions. People act as they like and avoid what they dislike. Their conduct of life is based on their mind's preferences rather than their intellect's discretion. So first thing that you must appreciate is that the likes and dislikes are an inherent part of your personality. Everybody has them. You may say, how did we get them? You acquired them by encouraging certain things that you have an affinity for or an attraction towards, discouraging other things that you are repelled from, that you are not interested in. So you generate these particular likes and dislikes. And again, there's nothing wrong with likes and dislikes per se. It's that non-rational aspect of it, of us. So we can't say it's a bad thing that I like heat and not cold, or it's terrible that really bad that I like savory and not sweet. We each have our own preferences. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is that often it's actually our friends, our well-wishers, parents, spouses that encourage these likes and dislikes within us. And what happens is these likes and dislikes then become like a motor that drives your actions. And this is where the problem arises. See, having likes and dislikes is no problem. We all have them. If I were to sit here, we'd all probably like and dislike different things. I don't know how you can like sweet things. Savory is so much better. Rice, you like rice? No, chapati. Chapati is number one. So there's no sense in us trying to say, no, these are the particular things you should like, and these are the particular things that you shouldn't like. It doesn't work like that. The problem arises, and this is a massive problem, is when we start functioning on the likes and dislikes. So we start acting directed towards the mind's preferences or away from the mind's aversions. Now, why is this a problem? This is a problem because you create unreasonable expectations. You like summer, you dislike winter. So everything's good if there's summer is there. As soon as winter comes, you're depressed. Unreasonable expectation because it can't always be summer. Winter's going to come, right? So you keep functioning on these likes, and this pertains to every aspect of your life. If you function on your likes and dislikes, you're getting yourself into trouble. You're leading yourself towards disappointment, unhappiness, agitation. So invariably what we see is people do the things that they like and avoid the things that they dislike. This is not the best way of functioning, because remember, your mind cannot correlate cause and effect properly. It can't do this. The mind's no good at this. So often what happens is the likes that we entertain often don't turn out to be the best for us. In fact, likes and dislikes have no overall bearing on our subjective happiness. We generate subjective happiness or subjective well-being by employing the intellect and doing that which we ought to do in life. Whatever experience is pleasurable in the beginning turns out to be detrimental in the end. And what is detestable in the beginning becomes beneficial, even delightful in the end. Ironically, sorrow appears in the garb of joy, and joy in the garb of sorrow. As a result, people yield to pleasant beginnings only to end in bitterness, and they avoid unpleasant beginnings to lose the joy of life. Now, this is a paradox that exists in life. Who knows how it came about, but often what we find is the things that we are attracted to and find pleasurable. Remember, the mind's in it for instant gratification. And if we look at the world, what is the world today? Instant gratification. People are functioning for instant gratification, instant pleasure, convenience. It all amounts to the same thing. So people will tend towards or act in the interests of their immediate pleasures. It doesn't take a genius to realize that more often than not, these instant gratifications turn out to be detrimental in the end. Take social media, for example. This is prevalent in the youth. It gives them instant gratification to be able to look at something or see what someone else is doing, or mobile phones. It's that instant gratification. I can see anything and know about anything at any point. But what happens? You develop a dependency on it. Later, it comes back to haunt you. Next thing, you go away with your parents and there's no Wi-Fi, and you see the children melt down. They literally can't take it, being disconnected. It's almost as bad as turning the oxygen off. Not only children, I've seen parents behave in a similar way. A very interesting, you have some guests come around, and come and stay, whatever, more than welcome. Got a room there for them. It's not long, within a few minutes. Do you have the Wi-Fi password? You have Wi-Fi? Yeah, can I have the Wi-Fi password? Can't live without it. You become dependent. So often what we find is the things that give us this instant pleasure, this instant gratification, these pleasurable things often turn out to be detrimental. Take, for example, food. A lot of people, in fact, most of America, it's a huge problem. I would say probably a huge proportion of South Africa as well, would way prefer eating KFC or Nando's or McDonald's. Way prefer. Junk food is so pleasurable. You don't have to cook it, don't have to prepare it. It's so tasty. Eat junk food for a month or two and see what happens to your body. And in fact, there was some documentary some time ago. Some guy did it. He ate, I think, McDonald's every day for 30 days. And it was quite remarkable what happened to him. Anyway, this is this paradox that exists in life. We don't know why. And all the things that are detrimental, or sorry, should I say, all the things that are in the Bhagavad Gita, it actually uses the word poison. That which is like poison in the beginning. Winter will be here in a few months, right? Poisonous to get up in the morning. Horrible. Raining outside or cold. You don't want to get out of bed. In fact, I was chatting with someone today. Yeah, I'd love to. We're down swimming. It's so nice in summer. And I said, yeah, the challenge is to do it in winter. She said, no, that's the hardest thing. Once I'm in the water, it's fine, but getting out of bed in winter, oof. You could see that winter had taken its toll on her. Repeated winters, big like this. So you detest it in the beginning. Exercise, no. In the cold, no. Turns out to be a problem later on. You don't want to do it. Now, if you decide, horrible, I don't want to do it, and you get up and do it, you find it becomes a joy. Now I can't imagine not exercising. It's something that doesn't even cross my mind. It's an absolute joy. All the things which were hard and you didn't want to do in the beginning, like even studying every morning to get up at 4:30, is not easy. It's not pleasant, It's dark, it's cold. It's so much nicer to lie in bed and sleep. But later it turns out to be the most pleasant thing. I can't imagine not getting up in the morning now. The best time of the day. Those of you not getting up, hoppers 4, 5, hoppers 5, 6, okay. If you're not up before hopper 6, you've lost out. Best part of the day. You're missing out. I'm telling you, missing out. What an opportunity, losing. Best time of the day. We'll get into, in another lesson, we'll get into why it's so important to get up early. I'm sure if I could see all your faces, you'd be rolling your eyes now, but I'll explain to you. So what we're finding is that because of this lack of knowledge, people are just simply following their likes and dislikes, doing all the things that they like to do and avoiding all the things that they dislike doing. And again, what we have to appreciate is all those things that are beneficial to us start off as unpleasant. I gave the example. And those things that are unpleasant in the beginning become beneficial to us. Those things are pleasant, detrimental. See, if it was the other way around, imagine all the things we like to doing were excellent for us. Oh, I love exercising. I love eating healthy food. I love all the things that were good for us. Imagine that just came naturally and those were pleasant for us, gave us such joy and happiness. If that was the case, then there'd be no need for these lectures. Everyone would just be doing all the right things all the time. Alas, says the Upanishads. It's not the case. We somehow get thrown in this paradox. I don't know who created this, but that's the way it is. The world is in a constant flux of change. It cannot always cater to individual likes and dislikes. You like summer and dislike other seasons, but the seasons will roll by. As a result, you enjoy 3 months and suffer 9 months of the year. Again, you long for the weekend. Thank God it's Friday, and you detest Monday morning. You are frustrated 5 days in a week. The trouble with most folks is that they live by their distinct likes and dislikes and cultivate more in their lifetime only to end up in frustration. Likes and dislikes are a part of your life. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with them. You need not avoid them, but you cannot allow your likes and dislikes to directly propel your actions. You must learn to use reason and judgment of your intellect to guide them properly to enduring peace and happiness. So again, it's not that you think of something to do. Oh, I really like doing a particular activity. I really like visiting my family. I've got 2 young nephews. I enjoy visiting them. Oh, if I enjoy that, pleasurable, must be detrimental in the end. You can't think of it in that way. All it's saying is that you have these particular likes and dislikes, right? Be aware of them. Understand how they function within you. And use the discretion of your own intellect to determine whether that's an appropriate course of action to take. You may like something and your intellect may go, yes, that's fine. It's in line with whatever we want to achieve. Yes, it's whatever the case. But the intellect must play that guiding and governing role. in determining the course of action. The mind alone cannot decide. Okay, so that's likes and dislikes. The next aspect of the mind that we're going to look into is this aspect called worry and anxiety, ramblings of the mind. Another disturbing attribute of the mind is worry and anxiety. The mind is worried over what has happened in the past and anxious as to what will happen in the future. That causes mental agitation and sorrow. It is worry and anxiety that saps human energy. It tears a person apart, and you become tired and fatigued. You believe work tires you. Work can never tire you. It is your worry and anxiety that causes fatigue. So two aspects here he's highlighting. We'll break each one down to make it more palatable, more digestible. The first thing is that the nature of the mind is to ramble. Now, I'm bringing it to your attention. Be aware for the rest of the lecture. Try and catch yourself. Notice where the mind slips off. I'm sure it's already happened. Half an hour. What are we on? Yes, half an hour. Half an hour is a long time to maintain concentration. In fact, what is concentration? See, whenever I ask this question, most people say, oh, it's focus, focus. And then I say, what's focus? Concentration. Concentration is defined as the intellect holding the mind on the present activity. If your intellect holds the mind on the present activity, then you are concentrating. Now, what's happened to the intellect? Title of the book, it's fallen. So where's the intellect? Well, it's not there. It's not strong enough to hold the mind where it should be. So what happens? The mind starts to ramble. So you may be listening to me. I got students who say they love coming to my classes. I say, that's fantastic. Are you learning anything? No. It's so peaceful. 5 minutes of you speaking out, fallen asleep. Some of you may have already achieved that state in this lecture. I can't see. I can only see some names, a few people with their cameras on. I appreciate that. At least I can interact a bit, yeah. So if you're unable to hold the mind where it should be, say on this lecture, then what happens? Mind's natural tendency is to go into the past and the future. You may start ruminating over what happened at the office or what happened in the day. Oh, I can't believe it. When I saw that person at the mall and I hadn't seen him in so long, it was just such a surprise. It made me think that you've lost it. You've gone off. One of the ways in which this happened, I don't know, this will probably, you can resonate with this idea. Often in the evening, I don't know, some of you may read in the evenings. You're reading a book and you're reading. And you catch yourself and you've read a whole page of the book and you don't know what you've read. Because what happened? Okay, the eyes are going over the words, but your mind has slipped somewhere else, has gone off somewhere else. So you take yourself back to the top of the book. This is a typical example of how the mind drifts off. This is what layman's language. The mind tends to drift off. Past, what happened in the past? Or what's going to happen in the future? Hey, half an hour. I hope this guy finishes on time today because really hungry. In fact, I wonder what the wife or the husband's made for dinner. Or maybe I have to cook dinner. I don't know. Again, mind's gone off. So the mind tends to worry over what happened in the past or is anxious about what's going to happen in the future. These worries and anxieties plague you. They cause you agitations. They cause you sorrow. They generate stress. The other aspect of worries and anxieties is that it fatigues you. Fatigues you. Now, there's a sentence here. I'm sure most of you, I'm not so sure about that. It says here, you believe work tires you. Work can never tire you. I say, all fair and well, Craig, maybe you got an easy job, but my work, no, very, very hard. I get back from the office every day, I'm very, very tired, very, very tired. Work can never tire you. And I'll explain this. You see, if your mind is vacillating, if your mind is constantly going into the past, into the future, past, future. Imagine I'm delivering this talk, right? And I'm pacing the length of my room, up and down, while I'm talking. At the end of the hour, I don't know how many steps I would have managed to generate on my Fitbit or whatever. But most certainly I'll feel some physical fatigue. Body is marching up and down for an hour, which good exercise, but you'll feel, okay, I've exerted myself. The same thing happens at the subtle level, at the level of the mind. Imagine your mind like ping pong, going this way, that way, this way, that way, worry, future, past, anxiety, worry of the past, anxiety of the future, past, future, past, future, past. This is exactly, you're sitting at work, right? What's happening? Where are your thoughts? At home, or the weekend, or the next holiday. Where aren't your thoughts? Exactly where they should be, on the job. So what happens is you get home and you say, oh, such a tough day. No, tough day. Tough because you don't have intellect to keep the mind on the job. You see, we get into a topic on stress, and you see how worry and anxiety come in to generate stress. This is one of the reasons of stress in your life. But for now, all you have to appreciate is that this constant fluctuation of the mind going from past to future, past to future, past, you can imagine, it's fatiguing. See, what really highlights this is children. See, young children, as they get older, they the ego starts coming up, and they start, and the mind starts dominating the personality, and they also start getting fatigued. But young children, oh my God, so much energy. Take a young child, 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old, constantly running up and down, jumping this way, that way, this way. The parents can never keep up. Why is that? Child is undeveloped, physically at least. Adult is fully developed. The adult has no energy, can't keep up with the child. That's why they got to give a tablet or get a babysitter to come and entertain that child, or take movies or whatever it is. No energy. What's the difference? See, a child has no worries or anxieties. Child, you ask, what do you want to do tomorrow? What is tomorrow? Tomorrow is what I'm playing now. Leave me alone. What do you want for dinner tonight? Whatever's there, just bring it, And what happened at school on Monday? Monday? What is Wednesday now? What are you bothering me about Monday for? There's a game going on here. Come on, come play, come shoot, come hoops. It's unbelievable. No worries and anxieties. Therefore, abundance of energy. Why? Because they're almost, not by virtue of the fact that their intellect is strong and holding there, but they are not thinking about anything. They're not, the mind's not fluctuating. Unlike an adult whose mind tends to start fluctuating, drained, always tired. It's not the work. Okay, if you're doing hard labor all day, then I'll say physically you could be tired. But mentally, you're quite okay. You won't feel that mental fatigue. You only feel physical fatigue. Now, when you get home, you got that mental fatigue. And your mind is operating at such a frequency, you need a shot of something, just to settle things down. So it causes you fatigue, running about all the time. Okay, so likes and dislikes, worries and anxieties. The next aspect is desires. So desires in a human being, again, is that aspect of the mind. And again, we all have desires. It is a case of how we manage our desires, how we contact the desires. Now, simply allowing the desires to function is not in our best interest. Is not in our best interest. So when we have these desires, right? Now it's important that we learn how to contact them properly. Now, when the mind is functioning, when the mind purely functions and there's no intellectual participation, what happens is that we tend to go all out to fulfill the desires, right? We indiscriminately contact our desires. The other way to manage or control or govern our desires is through the intellectual application. Okay, I have a desire to do something. Yes, the intellect sanctions it. All right, this time it's okay. We can afford it. We can do it. We have the time. We have the resources. Whatever the case, there's a plethora of desires we have. So it's important that we understand that, of course, we have these desires. And we're not saying that, okay, ultimately we want to try and remove these desires, because what you must appreciate is it's the unfulfilled desires within our personality that generate agitation within us. If we have a bundle of desires that cannot be fulfilled, we get frustrated, we get agitated. Now, if you're going all out through the mind, indiscriminately pursuing your desires, what happens is you end up generating more and more desires. The more and more desires you have, the less and less, or should I say, the more and more desires you have, the more chances there of them being unfulfilled. More unfulfilled desires, more agitations, more stress, less happiness. So you can appreciate that your happiness is directly related to your desires, the number of desires you are entertaining. So we want to try and make sure that we are in control of our desires. We're not suppressing our desires. We're not trying to frustrate ourselves. We're just making sure that when we contact the desires, we contact it in such a way that it is under control. We call the shots. The desires don't rule us. We rule over our desires. So what is desire, essentially? Desire is nothing but a stream of thoughts. A stream of thoughts flowing from you to the object of the world. So many desires are there. Why? You are sitting there. Your thoughts start flowing. Maybe you see a new car drive past, a new model. And what happens? It's just a thought. New car. When the intellect is not present, what happens? You establish a thought flow. Thoughts flowing towards that object or that being, whatever it may be. Your thoughts start flowing towards the object or being. That stream of thoughts we call as desire. And we're all filled with numerous desires. Numerous desires are there. So the trick is in managing the desires. Remember, the desires are insatiable. What you have to appreciate is that desires are insatiable. I'm just reading again from the text. An uncontrolled mind produces endless desires. The mind is like fire. You may feed fire with logs and logs of wood. It consumes them all and is ready for more. So is your mind insatiable, replete with desires. All the stress that humans suffer from is but mental agitation caused by unfulfilled desires. So again, when the mind's not controlled, you end up generating more and more desires. So the intellect plays the role in regulating, moderating, and controlling these desires. Now, of course, we're, again, not attempting to suppress, repress the personality. We have desires that need fulfillment. Yes, we're just saying there's a way to contact them, and there's a way that is detrimental for your own happiness. See, at the end of the day, Vedanta is not telling you what you should and what you shouldn't do. It merely presents a set of facts or of truths. You have to investigate those truths yourself. You have to figure out what makes sense to you. So it's important that you understand first the nature of the mind. This particular nature of the mind is the desires. It's insatiable. The mind will continue asking for more and more and more and more. There's no end to what it can acquire, what the mind can acquire. So again, he says, desires is defined as a stream of thoughts flowing from you to the object of your desire. Desires go through several modifications. So we establish that thought flow. You to an object. Maybe you see a beautiful woman walking in the street. What happens? Thoughts start going, wow, wow. You may be married. If there's no intellect, the thoughts are allowed to run. This is the problem. So much divorce for this reason. Uncontrolled mind. Thoughts simply go. So this is the stream of thoughts that develops desire. Everything, every tragedy, travesty in the world is because of an uncontrolled mind, which just allows these desires, these thoughts to establish themselves. The greatest atrocity started with a thought. And then that thought was just simply allowed to run. What would it be like? You know, the play Hamlet, sorry, not Hamlet, Macbeth. I don't know, any of you have watched the new one with Denzel Washington? It's great, it's fantastic. I'd highly recommend it. If you're into Shakespeare, it's difficult. I had to break it up into 3 sessions. But anyway, what happens there is the witches. I don't know if any of you know the play. They're these witches, right? I don't know. They are up to no good. And this Macbeth and his mate, I can't remember what his mate's name is. Anyway, they are walking on the way. They've just won a battle. And these witches come and they plant this thought. They say to Macbeth, you'll be king. Now Macbeth, there's already a king. King Duncan is there. He is just, they say, you're going to be the Thane of Cawdor. Yeah, they're giving him all these titles that he hasn't got yet. You're going to be this, you're going to be this, you're going to be this. And to the other guy, he says, you won't be king, but your sons will. It's just a thought that gets planted. By the end of the play, a heap of dead bodies are there. What happened? That thought developed into a desire. All of a sudden, and then Lady Macbeth fueled that desire even more. I'll not be king. Duncan's going to be over. All you have to do is put the knife. Next thing you're king. I mean, this is what the witches are saying. Just a thought. Anyway, highly recommend the Macbeth, the Shakespearean play. There's so many lessons in there. Anyway, now you got these desires. Now these desires go through several modifications. When you feed the desire and the thought flows thickens, you develop greed. You want more and more and more. I must have that. I have a desire to be king. You feed that desire. I must get it. And you do all these crazy. Macbeth actually killed the king because he got that greed, that avarice. And when your desire, greed is fulfilled and you gain what you want, you are faced with fear. You have become afraid of losing what you have gained. If, however, your desire, thought flow, is intercepted by an object or being, the thought flow gets deflected. The deflected thought current is called anger. And here's a typical example. So what you have to appreciate, all these emotions, in fact, one of the ways in which we define emotions is a modification of desire. A desire fed greed. In this particular example, a desire that is intercepted. Tom loves Elizabeth. You have it on the board here. Thoughts, those arrows, they're thoughts, thought currents going towards Elizabeth. All right. What happens? Another suitor, John, comes into the picture. John also has thoughts for Elizabeth. Now, Tom, who was the original suitor and had the thought flow and establishing this desire for Elizabeth, what happens when John comes into the picture? His thought currents, thought flow, his desire is intercepted and he gets angry at John. This is just one example. So to overcome anger, you need to examine the desire creating it. As desire, greed, and anger well up, and you get into delusion. Your emotions mounting up to this stage develop into arrogance at those below the level of your achievement, and envy at those above your level of achievement. Thus, a host of emotions invades your personality. So often I get asked, I get terribly angry, or I get terribly afraid. Any emotion, I get really depressed. Any emotion, to overcome that emotion, to arise out of that emotion, you need to investigate the triggering mechanism. The triggering mechanism in any emotion is desire. So if you want to overcome a particular emotion that you're not happy experiencing, perhaps it's greed, perhaps it's anger. You get angry sometimes, angry with your kids, angry at your boss, whatever it may be. And you realize, I don't want to be that person. What you have to do is you have to examine that desire. Where's that desire that's generating these emotions? Attack it there. You'll have to attack it there. It's no point in trying to directly deal with the emotion. I get angry. Just breathe 10 times. Okay, temporary balm you're putting on. Just breathe, Just be mindful of what's going on. It's a temporary solution. We are here to try and figure out a permanent solution to the defects in our personality. The way to do that is by getting in at the desire level. See where that desire is manifesting, and see how you can. You see, it's like this. When you have any of you been gardening, you have weeds, right, in the garden. Now, there's two ways of getting weeds out. You just get a lawnmower and chop it off, and it looks very nice. You don't see the weeds anymore. But in a month or two, what happens? The weeds just grow back, like the grass just grows back. Now, there's another way to address weeds as well. Well, there are many ways, but you find the weed and you pull it out at the root. Guaranteed that the weed's not growing back. Same principle applies here. To deal with a particular emotion, which is a modification of desire, you must pull it out by the root. In other words, you must deal with the underlying desire that is creating that particular emotion. Okay. Desires, besides developing into their modifications, also multiply in numbers like bacteria. They cause agitation and sorrow in the mind. All through life, the human mind moves from desire to desire, trying to find fulfillment. No sooner a desire is satisfied, many others spring forth. Thus you become bound, burdened with innumerable desires. You will have, therefore, to use the intellect constantly to control, guide your desires and their modifications. If you fail to do so and leave them ungoverned, they could cause you grief, misery, and even prove fatal. You know not what you want. Ironic as it may seem, none knows what to ask for oneself. People live in a cloud of ignorance, yet they claim to know what they want in life. They believe that they can define their desire clearly, but this is not true. It can be proved that whatever be your desire is really not what you want. You are deluded by your own desires. Very, very interesting, because everyone will tell you they know exactly what they want. Maybe, Craig, this applies to everybody else, but certainly not me. I know exactly what I want. Crystal clear. Life is set out. If I get this particular thing, life is set for me, and there's nothing else I need from this world. Honest to God. I say, what is it? What is it? Lottery. Give me that money and all my troubles are gone. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm just using a silly example, but everyone is clear that they know what they want. Nobody knows what they want. So what happened, I'll give you an example. And this example is actually in the book. And I would advise all of you to actually go through it. I'll just run through it quickly. So you got some food for thought and this concept becomes a bit clearer. So there's a bachelor, right? And the bachelor is doing pretty well. He's got a good employment. He's got more funds than what he needs, a nice place to stay, drives a flash car. Everything is perfect in his life, except one thing is gnawing at him, irritating him. What is it? He wants a wife. He wants someone to share all this abundance with. He wants a wife. So he's convinced. That's it. I know exactly what I want in life. He tells all his friends. He tells his folks, my life is incomplete at the moment, but one thing is going to complete it, and that's a wife. Clear in his mind. That's it. Just a wife and life is set. So what happens? He goes out and he finds a wife. And he's in marital bliss. Apparently it lasts 2 years. Studies have proved that this marital is a spark in your happiness, and then it kind of just tapers out. It tapers out in the same way that if you hadn't got it, your life would just be at a sort of regular level. This is a study that was done. Anyway, marital bliss, 2 years, is loving life and kind of tapers off. Then parents are, what's going on? Been married 2-3 years now. No children. Oh, no, we've been trying, but there's nothing happening, So they go off and they get all this treatment and that and end up having a child. Beautiful baby boy, healthy and everything. And they're elated and they're so happy. Later on, they find that the child is not hearing properly. Something is wrong. So they fall into depression again and they're trying to sort this out. They go to the physician and this and this. Finally, they meet the right doctor and the doctor says, there's not a problem. We can sort this out. And they fix the child's hearing and the child grows up. Now I ask you, was it just the wife that he wanted? And if you follow the sequence of events, you can appreciate, no, it wasn't. He wanted a wife that would produce a child, and not just a child, a healthy child, and not just a healthy child that could hear, and so on, and so on, and so on. In fact, Swamiji was talking, and he was talking about this concept in the audience. And the one guy stood up, he's like, Swamiji, everything you said makes sense, but I know exactly what I want. Says, listen, I've put everything in place. All I'm waiting for is the loan. My equipment is waiting for me in Germany. All I need is the loan from the bank. Once I get that, everything is in place. I've set it up like everything is in place. That is exactly what I want. Says, is that what you want? 100% sure. Okay. So I'll give you the loan, 5 million loan. Next morning in the newspaper, rupee, that's the currency in India, rupee devaluated. So now all of a sudden your 5 million loan is 5.5. He says, no, come on, son, that's not fair. You want 5 million, provided the rupee doesn't evaluate, provided on and on it goes. So it's proof that you don't know what you want. The desires continued passing through its metamorphosis. So too, the underlying desire in you never ends. A desire lures you to the pleasure of its fulfillment. But no sooner you fulfill it and the mind gains the pleasure thereof, it opens up fresh ones. The desire continues. It goes on and on. Your mind remains ever agitated and stressed with unfulfilled desires. Therefore, any desire that you entertain has no direction or dimension. It is endless, insatiable. Yet you believe you know exactly what you want. You seem absolutely sure, certain of the confines of your desire. You must clearly understand you know not what you want. You keep chasing your own shadow until you are sick and tired of it all. So it is with life. You project your egocentric desires and run after them. You may satisfy your immediate demand. No sooner you fulfill that, you project other desires. You pursue those and gain them as well. Yet other demands prop up. You grope in the darkness of your ignorance, not knowing what you really want. You are caught up in the quagmire of desires and remain disappointed through life. Then he talks about this poem, The Olive Tree, by Sabine Baring Gould. And in that poem, and by now you should all have the textbook. In that poem, what he describes is exactly this. So he describes these two hermits, and they want oil for midnight watching. So they go off and they get olives, and they plant these olive seeds, and then the one hermit starts praying. And he prays and he puts all these demands. He believes he knows exactly what he wants, what this plant needs. Convinced it needs this, it needs that, it needs that, and then I'll have olives. The other hermit just planted the olive tree and left it up to him who knew what it needed better than a man like me. Those are the words. So the poem, there are many lessons in this poem, and perhaps when you study it in the book, you can derive more meaning. But essentially what it's highlighting is this aspect that you don't know what you want. So I'm just going to read the poem. The Olive Tree. Said an ancient hermit bending, half in prayer upon his knee, oil I need for midnight watching. I desire an olive tree. Then he took a tender sapling, planted it before his cave, spread his trembling hands above it, and his benison he gave. But he thought the rain it needeth, that the root may drink and swell. God, I pray thee, send thy showers. So a gentle shower fell. Lord, I ask for beams of summer, cherishing this little child. Then the dripping clouds divided, and the sun looked down and smiled. Send it frost to brace its tissues, oh my God, the hermit cried. Then the plant was bright and hoary, but at evensong it died. Went the hermit to a brother sitting in his rocky cave. Thou an olive tree possessest, how is it, my brother, tell? I have planted one and prayed, now for sunshine, now for rain. God hath granted each petition, yet my olive tree hath slain. Said the other, I entrusted to its God my little tree. He who made knew what it needed better than a man like me. Laid I on him no conditions, fixed no ways and means. So I wonder, not my olive thriveth while thy olive tree did die. Sabine Baring Gould. Okay, so that draws us to the end of tonight's lesson. We'll pick it up again next week with the 2 motivations, and attachment is a big subject. So those 2 aspects of the mind yet to be covered, we will cover next week, and then we will get into the vital role that the intellect plays. Before we go, are there any questions or clarifications that anyone may have to tonight's discussion or from any other of the lessons? Again, I appreciate that we are moving through this quite quickly. Remember, we've got limited time to cover the course material. And again, I would encourage you all to go back, go through that which we've covered. You've got till next week. Go through that which has been covered in the textbook. Obviously, there's more detail in the textbook. And just start slowly, by reflecting, start familiarizing yourself with these ideas and concepts. In that way, you start developing a more complete understanding of what's happening within your own personality. Remember, this is not the erudition of scholarship here. We're not trying to be philosophers in the sense we're not trying to know a lot about philosophy. We are trying to employ this knowledge into our own personality so that we can effectively live a more wholesome, more pure, and more fulfilled existence.